class. Today we're going to do the second half of our muscular system lesson. We focused the first half on the microscopic anatomy. So we focused at the cellular level. What does a muscle fiber look like? How does it send a signal? And how does it get energy in the form of ATP? This half we're going to focus on the macroscopic, or sometimes we call that the gross anatomy of muscles. So we're going to focus on the muscles that we can see, such as biceps or triceps, and their functions that they have in the body. Before we do that, I'm going to bring up a very important point that we learned a few lessons back, and that brings up the golden rule that muscles can only pull as they contract, they do not push. And the reason that they are pulling and not pushing is because most body movements result from two or more muscles acting together or against each other. So a good example of this that you've probably heard of is your biceps versus your triceps. Your biceps contract and pull your arm up. Your triceps contract and actually extend and pull your arm down. One thing to note is that these types of muscles that have opposite actions also tend to lie on opposite sides of the joint. So if you think about where your biceps are versus your triceps, we see this be true. Now, before we go into the gross anatomy and their functions, there are a couple terms that we have to understand because we're going to be using them when we define them and their functions. The first one is prime mover. Whenever I say that a muscle is a prime mover, I'm talking about what is their major responsibility or their major movement that they do. So for example, if I say that something is a prime mover of elbow flexion or flexing the elbow, that is their major function or movement. The next definition is an antagonist. An antagonist is a muscle that opposes or reverses the movement of a prime mover. So if I said the biceps flex the arm, triceps do the opposite. They are going to extend the arm. Then we have muscles that actually help the prime mover in the movement in order to make sure that it is very smooth and coordinated and reduces any undesirable movements. And we call these muscles synergist. Your book uses the example that they say flexor muscles in the fingers can actually make a fist without bending the wrist because of synergist muscles. And there are special types of synergist muscles called fixators. Fixators actually help hold the bone still or stabilize the origin of a prime mover. And a good example of this is your postural muscles that stabilize your vertebral column whenever you bend over to pick something up or stand up. One thing to note is that the actions of antagonistic and synergistic muscles are very important because we want our actions to be smooth, coordinated, and as precise as possible. We don't want stilted or jilted motions or movements whenever we're walking or trying to frown. Here is a good example of all of these things being used to explain how elbow flexion or flexing the elbow works. A good example here is looking at the muscles of the brachialis, biceps, triceps, and other muscles. In this image, we see that your brachialis is going to be your prime mover. It's going to be the one that is going to be attached to help flex your elbow. The muscle that helps it is called the biceps. In other words, it's going to help flex that elbow as well and pull up the arm. An antagonistic muscle would be your triceps because it produces the opposite effect and it extends. And then we have some fixator muscles that help hold your scapula in place, so therefore it's not all wobbly, and again, you have that smooth, concise movement. Now, I bring up this picture because now we're going to focus on the gross anatomy, and we're not going to talk about it all in this lesson. We're going to focus mostly on the facial muscles and the head/neck muscles. Then on the next lesson, we're going to focus on the thorax and your arms, and then the following lesson we'll focus on the lower legs. So we will be taking this chunk by chunk. This is the anterior view, and here is the posterior view. I've also included these in the lesson as well because they come from your textbook and I want you to have a point of reference. For example, these tables help explain the name of the different muscles that we'll be talking about, their origin point, and so remember we talked about origin and we said that this is where it attaches to something that is immovable or barely movable. For example, your frontalis muscle connects to your cranioaponeurosis, which is an immovable kind of tendon in your skull. And then the insertion point of a muscle, this is your movable point. So here our frontalis muscle actually inserts into the skin in your eyebrows in order to move your eyebrows and make motions. And then here, this column lists the primary actions such as raising eyebrows. Here is also another reference as well for any head, neck muscles that we'll talk about, such as the occipitalis. Here, I'm going to use this image to focus on and refer to when I talk about the functions of the head and neck muscles. This image is also located in your notes for you to label to have as a reference point as well. So please make sure that you label them in your notes. Once you get this labeled, I'm going to be talking about the functions and refer back to this image. As I go through the functions, there is a section in your notes called the head and neck, and you're going to match the functions with the muscles. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you come up and ask me, and we'll go over those answers here coming up once we get through all of the muscles. We're going to first focus on facial muscles. Muscles in our face allow us to express facial expressions, such as smiling or frowning, to show different emotions that we have, if we're happy or we're sad. These are often going to have origin points in fascia, in other words, the outer covering of different tissues, or their origins are going to be on bones. Remember, origins are the immovable parts. Their insertions are typically going to be on parts that are going to be able to move, such as our skin. The first three muscles we're going to talk about is your frontalis muscle, your orbicularis oculi muscle, and your orbicularis oris muscle. Your frontalis muscle is actually named because it covers your frontal bone. This is going to be in the front of your forehead, and it actually allows you to raise your eyebrows and wrinkle your forehead. So if we look back at this picture, your frontalis is right here, forehead or front. The orbicularis oculi, if you think of oculi, this is going to surround where your eye is. This allows you to close your eye, squint, blink, and even wink. The orbicularis oris, I think of oris as being oral. This is going to be around your mouth. This is also known as the muscle of the lips. This is often also called the kissing muscle because it helps protrude your lips as well. So here we see your orbicularis oculi muscle around your eye, and then your orbicularis oris muscle around your mouth. The next set of bones that we're going to talk about goes in the following order. First, zygomaticus bones. You're going to note that you've probably heard of the word zygo, and that's because we learned that your zygomaticus is going to be your cheek. This muscle tends to extend from the corner of your mouth to your cheekbone, and it actually has the major function of drawing your mouth upward to smile. So when we look at the image, your zygomaticus is right here again where your cheek would be, kind of. I think it's mostly associated with like your cheekbone. So your zygomaticus bone or your zygomatic process is a bone that you guys talked about. Do not confuse that with number 6, the buccinator. This runs horizontally across the cheek, and it actually helps flatten it and allows you to whistle or blow a trumpet and holds food while eating. I think Zygomaticus and the Buccinator are the two most that people confuse because they're kind of right here in the same region. So notice that the Buccinator tends to be more of the cheek, where you see the Zygomaticus be more of the cheekbone region. The one I skipped, the occipitalis, is going to be over your occipital bone, which is the back of the skull. This is going to pull the skull, cannot spell apparently, please fix that in your notes, posteriorly or on the back. So when you're focusing on this, if I go back to the image, here is going to be your occipitalis, it's going to be the back of your head. Next, we have the masseter, which actually helps elevate your mandible. Remember, your mandible is going to be your bottom part of your jaw, which allows you to talk. It closes the mouth, allows you to chew, and open it in order to talk. And then we have your temporalis. This actually covers your temporal bone, which is where it gets its name. It is a fan-shaped muscle. And the major function, and this is what I want you to know because this is what I'm going to put on your guys' quiz/test, it is actually very important to help close your jaw as well. It acts as a synergist with your masseter to be able to do that. So if we look over here, we have our masseter here. It's our big muscle here to help open and close our jaw. And then our temporalis also helps do it. If you've ever put your hand on your temple, when you chew or close your mouth, you can feel it move. The next thing we're going to focus on is the neck muscles. Most neck muscles are going to be rotators. Remember, rotation means you can turn your head left to right. It's going to flex, such as bending your head down, or they're going to extend, such as bending your head back. The first one is your platysma. This is a single sheet-like muscle that covers the anterior lateral neck. So anterior, remember, means front, and then lateral means to the side. And this actually helps pull the corner of your mouth inferiorly or down into a sad face. So if I look back up at this image, it's going to be this huge muscle right here in the front to the sides of your neck. So we see it here on the lateral side on the front. The next one that we're going to talk about is going to be your sternocleidomastoid. And this is a very long word, and it has to do with the attachment points. Sterno means sternum, clyde means your clavicle, and then the mastoid is a special part in your skull that helps attach to. This is a pair of muscles that are found on each side of the neck, and they allow both sides to contract to pull our head down, such as if we're going in a prayer. Or if one side contracts, it helps us rotate or turn our face to the side or towards our shoulder. So if I look back up at this image, our sternocleidomastoid is right here. Again, notice it runs a big muscle here, allows us to pull our head down again and look to the side. And that is the end of our facial/neck muscles. I do highly suggest that you start studying these early because muscles are sometimes hard to grasp with their function, and I want to make sure that you know them. If you have any questions, please make sure that you ask, and I hope you guys have a great day.